When people hear the word cathedral, they usually picture something enormous: towers, bells, stained glass, stone arches, and a building that looks too grand to be an ordinary church. That image is understandable, because many famous cathedrals are huge and spectacular. But size is not what makes a cathedral a cathedral. A church can be ancient, beautiful, and world-famous without technically being a cathedral. Another church can be modest, modern, and fairly plain, yet still be one. The real difference is not visual. It is institutional. A cathedral is the church that contains the cathedra, the official seat of a bishop. That seat marks the place where the bishop presides over a wider Christian community. So the cathedral is not merely a large place of worship. It is the central church of a diocese, conference, or episcopal jurisdiction. The word cathedral comes from the Greek word cathedra, meaning seat or chair. That may sound surprisingly simple, but seats often carry authority. A judge has a bench. A professor may hold a chair. A ruler has a throne. In the same way, the bishop's cathedra is more than furniture. It represents the bishop's office, teaching role, and governing responsibility. In Christian traditions with bishops, the bishop is not just a guest preacher or ceremonial figure. The bishop is a leader of a defined church community. The cathedral is therefore the bishop's official church, the place most closely associated with that leadership. This is why a cathedral's identity begins with authority before architecture. The walls may impress the eye, but the seat gives the building its name. To understand the cathedral, you also need to understand the diocese. A diocese is a territory or administrative area under the care of a bishop. Inside it there may be many parish churches, clergy, schools, charities, chapels, monasteries, and local congregations. Each parish church serves its own local community, but the cathedral belongs to the whole diocesan structure. It acts as the central church for major ceremonies, important services, and the visible ministry of the bishop. This structure is especially important in denominations with an episcopal hierarchy, such as the Catholic Church, Eastern Orthodox churches, Anglican churches, and some Lutheran churches. In these traditions, bishops help organize continuity, leadership, and sacramental life across many local churches. Cathedrals began to appear as recognizable institutions in the 4th century, especially in regions such as Italy, Gaul, Spain, and North Africa. This timing matters. Before Christianity became legally tolerated in the Roman Empire, Christian worship was often more private, local, and vulnerable to persecution. But as Christianity became public and established, bishops needed central places where the expanding church could gather, organize, and worship openly. Early cathedral churches were not necessarily the towering medieval buildings we imagine today. Many were based on the basilica, a Roman public building form adapted for Christian use. Their importance came from function rather than decoration. They were places where the bishop and community met in a more public, structured, and permanent way. Over the centuries, cathedrals became powerful institutions. They were not simply buildings used on Sundays. In many medieval cities, a cathedral could be a center of worship, administration, education, music, law, charity, and civic identity. Cathedral clergy might form a chapter, manage property, maintain liturgical life, and support the bishop's work. Cathedral schools helped preserve learning and train clergy. Bells marked time, processions filled streets, feast days shaped public life, and construction projects could involve entire generations. A cathedral was often one of the most important landmarks in a city, both spiritually and socially. It connected local believers to a larger religious order, while also becoming part of the city's memory, economy, and public rhythm. Although bishop-centered churches existed early, cathedrals did not become universal throughout the Western Catholic Church all at once. By the 12th century, however, they had developed more distinct identities. They were increasingly set apart from parish churches, monastic churches, and episcopal residences. A parish church served a local neighborhood or village. A monastic church belonged to a community of monks or nuns. An episcopal residence was where a bishop lived. A cathedral was the bishop's official church and the central church of the diocese. These distinctions mattered because medieval society took rank, office, and legal status seriously. A building was not defined only by its stones, altar, or congregation. It was also defined by rights, duties, and recognized authority. Architecture became closely linked with cathedrals because many of them had the prestige and resources to become ambitious building projects. Romanesque cathedrals used thick walls, rounded arches, heavy columns, and a sense of monumental stability. Later Gothic cathedrals pushed upward with pointed arches, ribbed vaults, flying buttresses, and vast stained glass windows that filled interiors with colored light. These designs were not accidental. They expressed religious ambition, civic pride, and the desire to make the sacred visible. But architecture still does not define the category. A Gothic masterpiece is not automatically a cathedral, and a simple modern church can be one. The grand architecture often signals importance, but the bishop's seat is what makes the church a cathedral. This distinction becomes especially clear after the Protestant Reformation. In parts of Western Europe, including Scotland, the Netherlands, certain Swiss cantons, and parts of Germany, some churches rejected the authority of bishops or replaced episcopal government with a Presbyterian system. In that model, leadership is exercised through councils of elders rather than bishops. This created an unusual situation. Old cathedral buildings remained, but the office that originally defined them could be removed or transformed. Many ancient cathedral churches continued to be used for worship and kept the title cathedral because of history, dignity, and civic importance. Yet they no longer held the same hierarchical role as the bishop's governing church. The name survived, while the structure around it changed. That is why the word cathedral can carry different shades of meaning depending on denomination and place. In Catholic, Orthodox, Anglican, and some Lutheran contexts, the connection between cathedral and bishop is normally central. The cathedral is still tied to episcopal authority. In other Protestant contexts, the word may function more as a historical title for an important former cathedral building. This does not make the title fake or meaningless. It reveals how religious buildings accumulate layers of history. A church may begin as a bishop's seat, survive political upheaval, pass through theological reform, and continue as a major place of worship under a different system. Cathedrals are therefore not frozen objects. They are buildings whose meanings can shift while their names and stones endure. From the 16th century onward, and especially in the 19th century, cathedrals spread far beyond their older European centers through missionary activity and global church expansion. As Western European churches founded new dioceses in Asia, Africa, Australasia, Oceania, and the Americas, they also established new cathedral churches. These did not always look like medieval European monuments. Some were colonial buildings, some reflected local materials or styles, and others were modern structures built for growing urban congregations. What they shared was not one architectural style, but one institutional role. They served as the bishop's church for a defined Christian community. This global spread shows that a cathedral is portable as an idea. It can appear wherever an episcopal church organizes a diocese around a bishop's seat. Modern migration and religious diversity have made the cathedral landscape even more complex. In a single city today, there may be Catholic, Anglican, Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Coptic, Armenian, or Lutheran communities, each with its own structures and traditions. That means one city can have several cathedrals at the same time. This sounds contradictory only if we assume cathedral means the one central church for everyone. In reality, a cathedral is central within its own jurisdiction. One cathedral may be central for the local Catholic diocese, another for an Orthodox diocese, and another for an Anglican diocese. Each serves a different bishop, community, and ecclesiastical structure. The city may be shared, but the church authorities are not identical. So the clearest answer is this: a cathedral is a church containing the official seat of a bishop. But the fuller story is much richer. Cathedrals emerged as Christianity became public and organized. They became administrative, educational, musical, ceremonial, and civic centers. They developed legal identities that separated them from ordinary parish churches and monasteries. Some became architectural masterpieces because communities poured wealth, labor, and devotion into making authority and worship visible. Others kept the title through reformations that changed or removed bishops. Still others appeared across the world as new dioceses formed through mission and migration. A cathedral is therefore not just a big church. It is a church where office, history, hierarchy, worship, and community meet around one powerful symbol, the bishop's seat. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.